Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at St. Mary's Adult Forum on March 3rd, and my little presentation on the practice of sabbatical, both practically, theologically, profoundly, and then specifically how it will pertain to me. So I want to read this commandment again, this best way about sabbatical, and then we'll unpack some more. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. By the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female slaves, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. So why Sabbath? Why is this important? Why has God given us this as a foundational practice of the best way to be God's people and to be in relationship with one another? Well, remember, the Egyptians the Israelites had just come from slavery to Pharaoh. And if you remember Pharaoh's story, what were some of the things that they were trying to do to the Israelites? They were trying to kill them by overworking them. And so, because the Israelites were responsible for building the bricks that built the pyramids eventually and other buildings. And initially, Pharaoh made them work every day, took straw away from them. They made the work harder. And so really what God is saying is you have the economy, the economics of Pharaoh, which is work, produce for someone else. It gets harder and harder, and you never have time for yourselves. It becomes an enslavement, if you will, to production, not being. Why also the Sabbath is that this is reflected in the nature of God and creation. God creates in 6 days and rests the seventh day. Now, God doesn't need rest. God's not exhausted. What it is God creates and then has intentional time to enjoy that creation. So a very core aspect of who God is, who we are, because we are made in the image of God, is to work and also enjoy the fruits of that labor, the created environment, whatever that may be. And so in one way, it is, it's a radical move into who we truly are. There's a wonderful book by Walter Brueggemann called Sabbath as Resistance, and how to resist so many of the narratives in our life today that are killing us as a people. So Sabbath is for everyone. Why not you? And that's going to be a part of this, because one of the things I want to ask is, has our world once again gone the way of the economy of Pharaoh? Now, look, we Americans, we're very productive. And we are leaders in the world of technology and advancements of things. And in some ways, there's been a cost of this. Western society, we work more than medieval serfs did. We work more than when people in sort of that bondage and slavery worked then. In fact, it's so bad in America that they've done studies about even the vacation we do have is not fully taken. We live in a society that worships work. And the thing about it is that it does have a return, but it has a cost. And certainly in our society, because we were started by puritanical, hardworking English people, it's very difficult for us to rest. But when indeed, whenever we have a feast day in the church calendar, those were historically days of parties. Every time there was a feast day in the church, it meant that people didn't work, they got together, there was good food, there was rhythms of rest and relaxation. Yes, we need to work 6 days a week. Well, 5 or 6 days a week. In fact, actually, a friend of mine who's Israeli, he grew up in Israel, going to school 6 days a week. But, this call actually says that not just your employment, but your other work, laundry, groceries, all those things should be done in such a way where 1 day a week you can just rest and renew and take enjoyment in what has been created. So let's talk about why sabbatical for clergy. A sabbatical is a period of rest and renewal of refreshment that is really integral to the Episcopal culture. I'm very grateful for that. I have friends in other denominations who Their systems don't understand the real benefit of this, and so they have to fight for it. In fact, I've got an Eastern Orthodox friend who I was talking to, Armenian Orthodox friend, who just convinced his congregation that he should have a sabbatical of 6 weeks. And Episcopal sabbaticals are anywhere between 3 and 6 months. Depends. Because it is a gift, not just to the clergy person, but to the congregation at large. And I'll get that in a second. Why sabbatical for clergy? Well, the first I'll say is, why not sabbatical for all of you? I think it's a practice that, again, this workaholic culture denies as being beneficial. And yet so much of the studies out there from other countries about, like paid maternity leave for women and other things, 4-day work weeks even, like it talks about how there is actually better productivity in other ways of rest renewal. I have a friend who's a parishioner here who is in the finance business and has worked at a high-end company for almost 3 decades. And he was telling me how 3 or 4 years ago, he was like, I'm killing myself. And he went to his company and they gave him a 3-month sabbatical. And he said it was one of the greatest periods of his life. So, I wish it could be a part of everyone's, practice. I'm happy to go to your employers and talk about my experience when I get back. And I'll articulate for clergy specifically, while we have flexibility in our schedules, there's a lot of demand on our schedules. So while I am able to pick up my kids from school at 3:45 sometimes, there's lots of nights and weekends that I'm working as well. Not to mention, that call of I was called to once on a Saturday night to go to someone who died at 2 a.m. And that person invited me to go be there when the body was picked up at 4 a.m. And I had to show up here at 6:30 or 7 a.m. to then lead services. So I'm not poor meing, but it will be nice to have that refreshment from that sort of all rhythm. And here's the thing. I'm lucky that I'm at a church that we have not just one paid associate clergy, but there's Kathy here as well. Kira and I are both out of town this coming weekend, and Kathy's here to do a funeral for us. So for me, this is a real gift, but for clergy who are all by themselves, this is a tremendous gift. So again, how it works, just so you're aware, in the contracts of the clergy here at St. Mary's and for Eric, if you remember, Eric went on sabbatical last year. Kira and Eric accrue 3 weeks of sabbatical every year of employment to be taken after 4 years. So that's 3 months of sabbatical. They can take it with a month of vacation. This diocese has a tiered system, which is different where I've been before, but I, as rector here, accrue 4 weeks of sabbatical every year and can take it after 5 years. So actually, with a month of vacation, I could be gone for 6 months. That's a long time. I will say that 5 months is a long time. I will probably in the future not take a full 5-month package, if you will, next time. But what I'll do is piecemeal it at other times and be gone 4. The suggested minimum for the clergy structure is being away for at least 3 months. And the normal rhythm is 3 to 4. But I will be out of the picture. Like my email and phone are going to say, I will not get this email. I will not get this phone message. I'm going to come back from sabbatical. I'm going to delete every email, and I'm going to erase every phone message. Because of that much time, I will not. Yeah, we did a trial run last year on my vacation, and this worked well, actually. So let me talk about who, then, if I'm not here, how does this work? As you heard today and this week in email, we are hiring, I'm very excited, the Reverend Eric Matoye to be our assisting clergy during sabbatical. He'll be here 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Sundays. If you don't know Eric, his wife sings in the choir currently. He and his wife and son were a part of our Unplugged service many years ago. This is sort of their foundational church home, and Eric was actually sponsored for the priesthood out of St. Mary's. And I'm really excited this is public now. After his time with us, Eric is becoming the new canon for racial, social, and environmental justice in the Diocese of California. So it's a sweet spot that we'll have him here just before that full-time gig begins. So this is how it works. This is how the bylaws of the church and the canons of the church say. Everything spiritual, churches, Sunday services, worship services, all that stuff is under the purview of the rector. Everything temporal, money, property, things like that, is under the authority of the vestry, of which the rector is a part, but the vestry holds that authority. When the rector is away on sabbatical, let's play a game here, and if you know the answer, don't tell. When the rector is away, where does the authority of the rector default to? Who wants to take a guess? Good guess. You're close. So, thank you. It falls to the senior warden. And by default, then the senior warden should partner with the rest of the vestry. What I want to make clear is the authority of the rector does not fall to the associates. So while I will articulate that Kira will have responsibility for the day-to-day, again, we're lucky that she's already here. We're not having to bring in somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Kira will run the staff meetings. She will be here. Eric will work with her as assisting her. Hopefully everything is super smooth and nothing goes awry. Kira will work with the wardens, be intentional about preparing for vestry meetings with them. But while she'll have responsibility for the day-to-day, she actually has no authority if anything goes slightly awry. Major trauma, earthquake, fire, act of God, if you will, doesn't fall to Kira. It falls to the senior warden of the vestry. This is just hypotheticals. There's a situation where an employee needs to be hired or fired. It's not Kira. It's the senior warden and the vestry. So I'm just articulating that, ideally everything goes super smooth. My goal for sabbatical is I come back refreshed and renewed. You all have a period of refreshment and renewal, which we'll talk about in a second. And everything's ready to go for the fall, and nothing bad has happened. That's one of my goals. So that is the sort of the structure, if you will. I'm away. There's people in charge. The goal is, and I should also say too, nothing strategic or operational should happen when a rector's away. This is also why there is a hope that it's a period of refreshment and renewal for the community as large, as a community, because you really should hold off on anything that is really that higher level planning, processing, or thinking. Now, we are in a spot where there's really good things going on here right now. And there's energy and enthusiasm and stuff happening. So while we don't want to go overboard, we also want to make sure those things are nurtured, encouraged, orchestrated. So, it's not like everything stops. We want to keep those things that the Holy Spirit is doing in us going and see where she is leading us as well. But there'll be no 5-year strategic plans or capital campaigns happening. So let me tell you a little bit about my sabbatical, what my plans are. If there's a theme, it is family and friends. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to Europe for 3 months. That's not really in the cards. While the church does pay my salary during sabbatical, there's not a specific line item of funds to do things on sabbatical. There are opportunities I could have applied for funds, but they're very generous, they're wonderful, and they're once in a lifetime opportunities. They say if you get it once, you don't get it again. So I decided to hold off on that for a future sabbatical when my kids are older, when Heather and I could do something together. We are doing things together this summer, but so it's not like we're going, away for the 5 months. But I am focusing on what I'm calling an opportunity of friends and family, as well as the individual I was talking to earlier in the finance world who took a sabbatical. I asked him for wisdom, and he said, plan time to do things, and then plan time not to do things, because it's a terrible thing to get through all the time and realize you haven't had enough rest. The hope is I'm coming back with new ideas, energy. That the future presents itself, that I'm full to be prepared to do what God's done further. And you all are as well. So this is what I'm doing. The very first week, we're going to jump in the car and we're going to drive down to the San Clemente, Southern California area because my kids are on spring break. And we're going to spend the week with Heather's family. That'll be lovely. Come back about a week or so off. My plan in the in-between weeks is we've got 12 years of kid stuff in the house that has never been culled, as well as just stuff, because, when you got a big house, you fill it, and then it needs to be downsized. So one of the goals is gut the house. So that'll be over the 5 months. Another thing is there's just things in San Francisco that I've never done. I've never been to Alcatraz. Eugene O'Neill, the home where he wrote Long Day's Journey into Nights over by Danville. I have these little like day trips. So in between these things, I will fill them in. But the major marks, the travel is a weekend in Southern California with Heather's family, come back here for about a week or so, and then I have a practice every year right now of going to see my parents and also my brother by myself, because my parents are, in their 70s, early 80s, and it's just, I have an intention right now because they live in a small town in Indiana. It's not easy to get there, but once a year I go there for about a week by myself, and I'm just present with my family, so I can continue to nurture those relationships as an adult by myself. So that'll happen in April. I'll come back early in May. A friend of mine is getting married, and so I'm going to drive down to Ojai, California, and be a part of that. It's right around the bishop's consecration, which I will participate in, but I won't be there that Saturday because that's the day of the wedding, but I'll do what I can in that regard. And then later in May, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, so I went to middle school and high school there. And my parents don't live there anymore, so I never get back there. The last time I was back there was when I was moving here, so it was 6 years ago. I've got friends from high school and friends from my Episcopal summer camp that formed me that's still there. So I'm in touch with them. I'm just by myself, and unfortunately, this is one of those things where they were like, wish you could bring the family. And I'm like, well, they're still in school. That's the other thing, too. It's like my kids have activities in the summer. But I'll go see that core group of friends. June is really the exciting one. This happened, surprisingly. My kids' school is doing some construction, and so they had to extend their summer by 3 weeks. And so this is really, I would say, if there's a pinnacle moment, it's this in some ways. So I always take the kids back to Indiana for about 2 weeks every summer. Heather comes out for one of those weeks, so this is what she will do. But I also have family in Denver, a cousin and aunt in Denver. So we're going to fly to Denver, spend 2 nights there, then fly to Indiana for a week. Heather will then come back here to work. I'll be with my parents. And then after a couple days, I'm going to drive my parents' minivan with my kids and my parents back to Northeast Iowa, where my mom's from a town of 900 people. My dad's from a town of 3,000 people. My dad's sister, my aunt, still lives there. I've got one cousin there. I've got another cousin who lives in Minneapolis who's going to come down. And I've got a bunch of second cousins and, first cousins once removed. And my kids are going to see where I was baptized, the house that I came into when I was a newborn, the place where my parents grew up, the graveyards of great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. That we will go to literally, I know on my dad's side, this is pretty clear. My mom's side, a little different, but I can go to the spot where the house is that my great-great or great-great-great-grandparents moved from Norway and initially just dug a hole in the side of the mountain, the hill there, and then built a covering to live in. That. It's not in the family anymore, but the land's there. So we'll do that for about a week. We'll come back, chill out for a couple days, and then I have a best friend in Chicago where I also went to went to college for a couple years. I also went to school. I graduated from Boulder, Colorado, so my kids will see that environment. I'm going to go up to Chicago with the kids. We'll get a hotel room. We'll visit my dear friend and his young kids, and we'll spend 3 or 4 days there exploring Chicago. Then we'll come back to Indiana and spend a couple more days. And then, on the way back, we're going to hopefully hit the Denver area again. So I've got actually a friend from high school who's there, so I can see her and stuff. So we're going to be gone for the whole month of June. And Heather's actually kind of worried because she's on a mission trip that last week with her church. And so she's like, I'm going to be away from you and the kids for 3 weeks. That's never happened. It's a long time. But it's not like we could come back a week earlier because she'd be gone. So anyway, that's June. July is the most open-ended right now. I do hope to take a silent retreat at a local monastery. I also have applied to be the chaplain at this thing called the Chautauqua Institution in Western New York. Now, I don't know if I'll be invited, and I've yet to hear that. So if it does happen, it'll happen in that month. So I may do both that and the spiritual retreat. And if I wind up only doing the spiritual retreat, I'll probably figure something else out to do that month. My daughter's in a ballet intensive for 5 or 6 weeks there, so hence one reason why we can't do anything bulk in that time. But then when August rolls around, we have the money. We save some money to do a family vacation. Normally our vacation is just going to see grandparents, which is lovely. But we're going to spend a week or so doing something really fun with the kids as a family. And then we'll close out, and Heather gets 3 weeks off in August. And then we'll close out the sabbatical with time with her family. And so that's sort of the arc. Again, hopefully the house is empty of all those things by August. And with that, I will say that, Eric said to me once about his sabbatical, he said it was really great, all the things he got to do. And there were just some days there where he woke up and realized he had nothing to do and how blissful that was. I'm looking forward to that. So let's talk about how you can enter into the sabbatical opportunity. Because my curiosity is, how can we as a community live into this? It really is, and it's their practice of what would it mean as a congregation to rest and renew. Now, one thing is our rhythm kind of lives into this. We do slow down usually in the summer. A lot of our people do travel. But I would invite, maybe you want to, this would be interesting for us. Take a Sunday off of St. Mary's and go to another Episcopal church in San Francisco. Check it out. See what it's like. I doubt you will be sold to stay there. But one thing is you'll understand the reality of some of the churches out there right now. It's stark in some places. Other places it's not. But, also you may learn some things. You may learn, there's some things that they're doing that we could do. Yeah, heck, go to another church. I'm particularly saying in San Francisco because this is where these faith communities are. Go check it out. See how you're in a different experience could bring refreshment and renewal or even just appreciation to you. I'll let Kira and Eric decide to do something, maybe if there's something more. But again, we don't want to overprogram people. But I want you to look at this too as a period where, and we're in a really beautiful spot right now. Our foundation as a community is really solid. We are growing, and there's a lot of life. So again, we don't want to tamp those down, but we're also not facing a $190,000 deficit like we did last year. So it's a good time for us to be grateful, to be to just appreciate all the things that God has done for us and we've done for ourselves, for each other. And so maybe there's ways that you as a community and as individuals can, in terms of your St. Mary's practice, take an intentional moment of rest and renewal. Now I want to talk to us all in general. I would say this is the ideal. Not that we all live into it, I don't myself, but my hope for us is human beings made in the image of God, is that once a week, whether it's a full day or if it's an afternoon, there's some intention about resting. That is the Sabbath practice on a weekly basis. This one's the one that I don't fall into really well, but I see where I could. I would say once a month, if you could take a full day or day and a half, or if you could take a weekend, great. But once a month, have more than just that weekly practice for a period of refreshment and renewal. Maybe it is, if you only can get an afternoon weekly, maybe it's you say, for this one day, I'm going to, here's the thing. I often work on Fridays, my day off. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes I work on Saturdays, like I have for the last 2 weeks. And so I'm aware that a lot of times I will work 6 days a week. I try not to do 7. But once a month, I need to make sure I have both Friday and Saturday off. And if that happens, if I don't, I begin to fray. 1 week a year. And I know some of us have different levels of vacation, so this might be looked differently, but how could you 1 week a year or one long weekend a year have some intention around spiritual rest and renewal? There are beautiful monasteries all around here that have very, very, it's cheaper than a hotel, and it comes with meals, usually. Can you go away for 2 or 3 nights? Or just whatever you have. How could you be intentional for 1 week a year? And then, this is a big one, and wouldn't it be great, though, if this was true for all of our work environments, if you could have at least 1 month every few years, whatever sort of rotation, that is different than vacation. Or if you're somebody who's retired, how can you engage in these just intentionally? Because I know lots of people who get retired and say they only get busier. And that's fine, actually. The church relies on that energy a lot. But how are we living into our identity of God and God's best way of living the abundant life through rest, which is a radical action in our life, in our world today. So my invitation for you all as individuals and families, 1 day or afternoon a week, 1 full day or a weekend a month, 1 week or a long weekend a year, and then maybe a couple weeks to 1 month every few years. How could you live into that? So with that, we've got 3 or 4 minutes. Do we have any questions? You're all rested. You're refreshed and renewed.
When we go to that new church and everybody runs up to us thinking we're a new person.
You say, I'm from St. Mary's, and our rector invited us over this. He's away on sabbatical, and he said he'd love it if we, explored and experienced in our part of our own refreshment the breadth of the Episcopal Church in the San Francisco area. And you say, I'm here to experience the beauty of your community. See that? Because we all, there's beautiful things going on here in various ways. And if you go to a different denomination, try that out. See, I'm here to experience the beauty of your community.
I'll just second that as a great idea, because years ago, the diocese had a walk around the city. It was a long walk. It was a fundraiser, I think. Anyway, we went to Episcopal churches all around the city. It took all day. I got into places I haven't been, was never in before, haven't been to since, but I have images of all of these places, and they are so different.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
There's 16 worshiping communities in San Francisco, including Grace. A couple of them are online only, but yeah, there are unique opportunities all throughout, just San Francisco. That's just this deanery.
Yeah, we used to go to the Taizé service at St. Luke's.
Not St. Luke's.
Trinity.
Trinity, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to stop the stream. Thank you all. If you choose to listen to this elsewhere, thank you all for being here today. And let us go forth in the grace and love and rest of God.
Enjoy.